Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to our session today, Proven and Successful Revenue Generating Ideas. Before we get started with today's P&A Ad Symposium session, we ask you to join us in celebrating some of the award-winning submissions from the 2021 P&A Foundation Advertising Contest. By sharing these winning entries, we hope to honor talent and success and add to the ideas and takeaways you're receiving through this week's sessions. Each year, the Foundation's advertising contest recognizes ad departments from Pennsylvania news companies who are producing outstanding print and digital ads, as well as other revenue-generating campaigns and products. The 2021 contest was judged by members of the New York Press Association. Across the four circulation divisions, over 320 entries were received from 20 news organizations. More than 130 have been recognized with first, second, and honorable mention awards, with certificates and plaques mailed earlier this month. Today, we highlight the winners of 2 of the 14 categories. In the best single ad category, which you just saw, ads from a single advertiser are judged based on basic idea, layout, copy, typography, headline, use of white space and originality, and effectiveness. For the best real estate builders renters ad, which you're looking at now, entries may be print or digital, classified or display. So congratulations to these award winners and all of our 2021 winners. We invite you to view a compilation of all winning entries on the P&A website at panewsmedia.org. All right, here we go. We are on. So hello again, everybody. My name is Bob Geiger. I'm the Vice President of Sales at PA Media Group here in Central Pennsylvania. Thank you for attending today's session of the P&A Advertising Symposium. As our news media organizations learn how to navigate a brand new post-COVID world, today's session will help us find new opportunities, tried and tested by other organizations, and will offer the opportunity to learn from the experts and to bring home new revenue ideas to your organization. And that's why we're here. For today's panel, we are joined by Mike Blinder, the publisher and editor and publisher, Paul Kasbohm, the Senior Vice President, Chief Revenue Officer at Star Tribune Media Company, Jason Hegna, the Vice President of Sales at Shaw Media Group, and John DeAugustine, the President and Publisher at the Schenectady, New York Daily Gazette. You can see all those the handsome gentlemen there on the slide that are about to speak with you, and you can find all their biographies on the event page for today's webinar. You're in for a treat today. The collective wisdom here is nothing short of colossal. In my career, I've learned to shamelessly borrow and steal from people like Mike and Paul and Jason and John. And in fact, I've stolen a lot and borrowed a lot from Paul. I've called him more than once. He will attest to that. And you know, leaders and members of the industry, like everyone here today, I think it's, especially in this moment, it's incumbent upon us to make collaboration and sharing and borrowing and stealing great ideas our superpower. We all need to get better at that, and we will all be better for it. So I am excited to step back and welcome some of the leading figures in our industry to join today's webinar. Mike, take it away.
There's an old expression in sales, which is under promise and over deliver. You set that bar pretty darn high, my friend.
I know you, Mike.
I am honored to be with you today. I'm Mike Blinder. I'm sure I know many of you. I've spoken at P&As in the past, worked with a number of different newspapers up there over my many years in the industry. And today I am the publisher of E&P. And I'm honored to be in that position as well. But let's bring in our panel right now. I got Paul, as you already know, from the Star Tribune company. Boy, there's so much we'd like to discuss with him about the culture of the newspaper during what Minneapolis has been through. But we won't. We're going to stay on the revenue side today. But I just cut a deal with him. You might be finding an article in the next month of E&P as we dive more into what it really was like to work in that newsroom. Jason Hegna is a good friend of mine. I've worked with the Shaw family for years. Jason, thank you so much for joining us. And by the way, when I introduce our third speaker, and he'll be joining us in a moment, John DeAugustine, I've worked with his newspaper as well. So these are three pretty good friends. They're going to talk to you about hopefully actionable revenue ideas. And that was the goal today. Things that you might want to do, think out of the box in order to find new ways to create necessary dollars to help offset the costs and obviously continue our mission for the towns we serve. Um, Another thing I'd like to tell you is when we were putting this panel together, I wanted to make sure that I was giving you different flavors and stripes from the industry. Obviously, Paul is from a major market operation. Jason, I don't know if you're familiar with Shaw Media. Tom and Ben are good friends of mine, and Shaw is it's weeklies and suburban and mostly, and they even have some smaller market newspapers they've acquired over the last few years. And then when you look at Schenectady, you're looking like you're at a medium to medium small market, non-medium market operation in a very, very competitive media town. So with that being said, let's not stand on ceremony. Let me bring in Paul. Paul, welcome to our forum today. You're going to give us a quick overview of a few things, and keep in mind, Paul, I'm running the slides, and if I don't react quick enough, feel free to say something like, next slide, please. Is that okay, sir?
That sounds great. All right. Well, thank you so much, Bob, for having me. Thank you to Mike for moderating, and to Matt, who's the guy behind the scenes running all of the tech. Thank you to Jason and John for being on the panel with me. Welcome to all the participants. I hope we can give you a few ideas that you can monetize in your own markets. The first one that I wanted to share, as we went through the pandemic, all of us were scrambling, obviously, and we're trying to, trying to practice some habitual innovation and try to figure out how can we continue to have revenue streams coming in order to fund the quality local journalism that we all believe in. So for us, one of our big strategies, we do a lot with events at the Star Tribune Media Company. We monetize them quite well, none bigger than the Minnesota State Fair. And as the pandemic wore on and wore on and wore on, and finally the announcement was made that the State Fair of Minnesota was going to be canceled, we were collectively devastated in the state of Minnesota. I know everybody has state fairs, but there's something special about this one to Minnesotans. It's one of the largest state fairs in the country. It's called the Great Minnesota Get Together, and if we ever needed a Great Minnesota Get Together, it was this year. So when that news broke that there wasn't going to be a state fair, we did some research. We talked to some of our audience members, and we started asking questions, if we could, would you type questions, if we were able to recreate in a virtual space some semblance of the Great Minnesota Get Together of the State Fair, would that be of interest to you? And overwhelmingly from our research efforts, the answer came back, yes. We would love to get together in some sort of fashion and have some semblance of our loved Minnesota State Fair. So we quickly took that content, that information back internally. We got together with our digital team. We got together with our newsroom, our marketing function, our advertising function, and we tried to figure out, could we pull this off? And if we could, who might sponsor it? How might we fund an effort like this? And so we reached out to our normal sponsors of our annual event. We do a lot around the in-person state fair with sponsorship and advertising opportunities, and we went to those brands and we said, hey, listen, the audience thinks that they'd have interest if we could pull something off. Could you help us fund it? And the answer again there was yes. And so it was born. So the reimagined Minnesota State Fair, just like the regular in-person state fair, it was a 12-day virtual event that unfolded across our platforms. it included as much of that in-person state fair experience that we could figure out a way to do. So we had our contests, there was talent contests, there was cooking contests, there was all kinds of different experiences, virtual experiences that we provided. It was well received by the market. So I'll hit just some of the engagement facts involved in it. The content was fantastic. Our newsroom, I can't give enough praise to them. They churned out 65 pieces in total of content. 39 of them were videos. We had the virtual state fair content actually drove hundreds of thousands of page views to starttribune.com. It was largely fueled by social, so that represented about half of the traffic to the virtual state fair content came from our social platforms. And the other big piece of content that was incredibly popular, state fair is all about food. I mean, you go there, you kind of fast for a few days because you're going to be sampling all kinds of different food. And no surprise, that content was eaten up, excuse the pun, by our audience. It made up 20% of the virtual state fair content. Yet that content drove a majority of the traffic. And I should say a little bit more about those pieces of content. Our newsroom went out and got some big names. So we had some big concerts, virtual concerts, of course, BYOB. But we did some big name entertainment things, local, but also national names that everybody would know. So that was that was one of the highlights. And then we can go to the next slide. I know you guys are here to talk about revenue. So
Paul, before you jump on, we did have one question from the crowd.
Sure.
And they were asking, what platform did you use? Was it one you built yourself, or was it a platform that you contracted with? Like, how did you execute all this together in one place for a virtual event?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Our senior vice president of digital, Jim Bernard, he's the guy that that runs all of our digital platforms. So it was a homegrown. He did it within our existing framework. It actually wasn't that hard to pull off from the tech side once we figured out what content direction the newsroom wanted us to do. So this slide, I just wanted to illustrate a little bit about how some of those sponsorships showed up in print and digital. So Mystic Lake, it's a large regional casino here in the Twin Cities marketplace. Historically speaking, they're one of our big sponsors of our in-person state fair coverage that we do every year, and they stepped up here again. The right-hand side, you see an image of how that sponsorship showed up, that large ad unit at the top of the page. The left side is, if you look at the upper left-hand corner of that print broadsheet page, you can see how their logo representation shows up there, adjacent to some of the state fair content as well. That's just a quick visual of how those sponsorships showed up in our different product channels. You can go to the next slide.
If I may ask a question very quickly.
Sure.
Now that we're coming on the back end of COVID, hopefully, and I'm assuming that your state will have the fair live next round, do you think there's still opportunity for you to do some virtual stuff there now that you have put all the tools in your toolbox, maybe broadcast a few things, pick up some sponsors, and allow some people who still may be a little trepidatious about going out, still experience the fun?
Absolutely, we do. Yeah, and there's a lot of things that some of the innovations that we came up with during the pandemic period, we think will stay with us. And that's one example, Mike. We've always done a great job monetizing our state fair, but we think there could be some additional opportunities. So historically speaking, it's been print and digital. We have a stage in front of our presence at the state fair, so there's been some event components to it as well. But yeah, I do think we can build out some of those digital assets this year, assuming the state fair is going to be in person, to better serve Minnesotans who maybe just aren't quite comfortable getting together in mass.
And they've learned how to operate on a computer, so you're still providing a service and getting those sponsors a new revenue stream. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, so we can go to the next slide and get to the monetization efforts. I'll go back one there, I think. That's the next idea. Was there one more slide?
This is the one I've got, sir. It was
Okay.
e-newsletters webinars. And if I
Okay. Well,
blew it,
yeah, that's
forgive
okay.
me.
I can certainly speak to it, Mike. So the monetization efforts, just to give folks a sense of, okay, so was it worth it? It absolutely was worth it. You know, we had a goal of, we knew we couldn't generate our normal ad revenue streams by doing a virtual state fair. So we did a stretch but realistic goal and said, hey, you know, if we could get 60% of our usual ad revenue attached to the fair and do it virtually, we would call that a success. That would pay for all of the efforts, that would deliver decent margins to the bottom line. We achieved that. So we drove well over $300,000 in virtual state fair sponsorship and ad adjacencies throughout those 12 days. So that gives you some sense of kind of how we did it. We did a lot of other virtual events, but that was kind of the biggest one. I think best illustrates how we were able to reimagine that space. All right, so the next concept, as we got deeper into the pandemic, we were really challenging ourselves to try to figure out how can we stay relevant to our advertiser base and to our prospect base. And so we reached out to them. We always kind of try to do a little bit of primary research before we launch down a road. And we asked the question, you know, how can we serve you? And what we heard back from our ad base and our prospect base was, we are really challenged. We are really confused. We are struggling with how to navigate these times from a marketing perspective. How do we run our businesses? Should we market? Should we not? If we do market, should we change our messaging? I mean, there was just a overwhelming response that they were looking for someone to be kind of a consultative guide and help them navigate these times so that their businesses could survive and in some cases even thrive. So here again, you know, as we got through the pandemic, we just kept trying to find the opportunity within the crisis, as we did for State Fair. We took that feedback, we sat down, and we decided that we were going to launch sort of a market outreach effort with two different channels. One was going to be an newsletter, and the other was going to be a series of webinars. And the intent was to serve local businesses and to really provide content that would help them you know, market and run their businesses during a pandemic, during a time of incredible social unrest, especially here in the epicenter in the Twin Cities, during a time of whatever side you're on, a time of a really strange and election cycle. There was all kinds of distractions, and so these folks, they wanted some help. So here's some stats on how those two different channels went. The newsletter stat, you know, we've done 23 of them so far. The average list side is somewhere around 29,000. We're having really good open rates, really good click rates. For those of you, everyone here, I think on this call is in the advertising marketing space, 17.4% for open, 12.2 for click. That's impressive. So that told us that this content is resonating. We're actually filling this need that we identified by providing some counsel. Similar stats on the webinars. You know, we've done 16 of them. Very similar list size, open rates, and click rate averages are about the same. And we've had a total of almost 3,900 different businesses register for our events, and the average is about 250 businesses per event. So we're talking to a lot of people, you know, that we weren't able to talk to because you can't go out and see folks and talk to them, you know, in person. So this gave us some scale. This gave us a couple different ways that we could communicate our content, communicate our expertise, provide some guidance. And although it wasn't the direct intent to monetize these efforts, what we found is that both the newsletters and the webinars led to some real significant revenue opportunities, much needed revenue opportunities for us during the pandemic. The visuals on the slide there, you can see the right-hand image is an example of a newsletter. So that one was titled Marketing During Crisis, Insights from the Star Tribune. The content was all written in my voice and signed by me. We pulled proprietary research that we have through our RAM panel. We pulled some secondary and third-party research that we purchase. We included insights from key stakeholders in the market on what they're doing. We did some case studies. We were always promoting circulation, letting folks know that if this content's of value to you, please consider being an advertising partner, or please consider getting a subscription to continue to fund local journalism. So we had some self-serving messaging going on there in those newsletters as well. The image on the left shows you a little bit about what the invitations look like for one of the webinars. That was a recent one. Our newsroom has a big content push about better serving greater Minnesota, not just focusing on the Twin Cities with their content strategy. And we're funding that in advertising by finding partners. So that particular webinar, I had the editor-in-chief, I had a large business figure in St. Cloud area. It's a greater Minnesota population center on that call. And we talked about what the newsroom's vision is, how we wanted to cover St. Cloud with the newsletter, cover St. Cloud across all of our channels in a more meaningful way. And of course, I was making the plea to help fund that. Tremendously successful. You can go to the next slide. So we used those emails and those newsletters, and we used those webinars at times to push big initiatives out of the advertising and marketing areas. One of our new initiatives we launched during the pandemic was sort of a best of. We're calling it Minnesota's Best, but basically it's a consumer voted best of across a multitude of categories, 300 or 400 some categories. It's been tremendously lucrative for us. So we use those platforms not just to educate businesses on how to navigate these times, but also to tell them we have some great solutions that you can take advantage of to keep your brand visible and to stay in front of your customers and your prospects during the pandemic. So revenue generation tied to those two efforts, and this is still going up. That's an outdated number now, but we're well over $500,000 of new revenue. The majority coming from new accounts that we didn't have a relationship with before the pandemic, coming out of that effort. And here again, Mike, this concept of doing continuous e-newsletters and webinars, or maybe one day there'll be in-person events to fill that role and kind of be that consultative expert for businesses, not just a media company to place an ad in, a media partner to help you navigate and run your business. We're going to continue doing that post-pandemic.
Let me ask you this then, and you should continue it. Did you do any form of a leads pipeline at the end of it? Because this is, maybe you disagree with me, but we all have great tools in our toolkit. And if we do a consultative sales process with an advertiser, whether we sell them print or digital services or email marketing or programmatic or what have you, you have those at your beck and call. The hardest thing is the prospecting. Did you have a lead generation form at the end, like a little needs analysis or some way to get that sales pipeline filtered? It just happened organically and naturally.
Yeah, so as they go through the registration process, we capture all of their contact information. And I don't do really a hard sell on those webinars. I mean, I ask them to be an advertising partner because we're best in class and we know our solutions work, but also to fund local journalism. I ask them to be a subscriber to fund local journalism. But individually, there is a team of sales reps, those participants and the recipients of the newsletters, participants on the webinar. They do get followed up with a Start to Being Sales executive to say, hey, I want to follow up on this content. How can we serve you? What did you think of it? Do you have any feedback for us? Can we help you in any way? And that has been productive. Yeah, this slide just gives you more. Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Mike.
I was just to say, and that led to sales and new advertiser revenue, which is great. Go ahead, sir. I'm sorry.
Yeah, the majority of the revenue to date has come from new advertisers, new relationships. These are just some examples. Here again, one of the ways that we monetize is we actually have our newsletter that we send out is now sponsored. That middle image, you can see that the content we were pushing out and that particular one was sponsored by Arvig. So they pay for that sponsorship. On the right and the left, those images are showing the St. Cloud newsletter that we pushed out. We made that possible by finding a sponsor. In this case, it was Coburn's Grocer. There are many other ones that help to make that St. Cloud content and that newsroom initiative possible.
Excellent.
And I think my final one, I believe, is our branded content agency. Yeah, as we did our research going through the pandemic, here again, I'm sure many of you found the same thing. Gordon Burrell has a great piece of research on this. We were looking for, like, what are the channels? What are the products that are going to become increasingly important as we get through the pandemic and as we emerge from the pandemic? One of those areas is branded content. We found, and lots of other research bears this out, is that branded content is going to increasingly become a really important tool for brands and for marketers because they have content and they want to tell their story. The problem they have is they don't know how to package that content, and they don't know what channels are best. So we launched a creative, a concept, and a content agency called Foundry 425. It's officially launching in 2021, but we unofficially launched it during the pandemic. We do content creation, print, digital, video, social, events, all branded content. We work with these different brands. We find out what they have, what's the story they're trying to tell. We tell that story for them, and we push it out through our channels. Key categories for this: we've done a lot in financial, a lot in medical, a lot in real estate. Those are key categories, but there's probably 5 or 6 other categories that we've monetized really well. For 2021, we budgeted $3 million in ad revenue for this effort, and we're pacing to exceed that as we work through the year. One interesting thing we're finding, the revenue year to date, we're at 1.5 million, is 70% digital. So there is print, there is event, but it's really turning into a digital play. These are just some creative examples, things that we've done for Mayo Clinic, things we've done for the University of Minnesota Hospital, things we've done for UCare. So just giving you some examples there, you can see the quality of the content that we're producing for those brands. There may be another example slide coming up here. Financial category, yeah, Alaris, Inspire, these are local or regional financial players. You can see that Spire wanted to have a little bit more fun. They wanted to be non-financial. They're looking for kind of that animation thing. Their whole concept was, we're with you at every turn of life. From when you're trying to pay off your loans to got your first job and you're getting into your house, and now you're having kids, you got a plan for college. So that's their concept. That's the story we're telling. Alaris was a little bit different. Their concept was staying financially fit. As you go through difficult times like a pandemic, you want to make sure that you're being careful, thinking about how you're going to optimize your personal wealth, how you're going to plan for retirement, all of those types of things. So they took that route with financial literacy. But those are just some examples of the work that Foundry 425 group is producing.
That's 70% that's digital, Paul. When you post those branded content articles in your website, I'm assuming they optimize really nicely on Google. I mean, people are seeing their content come up very, very strong. My question is, do you allow it to stay optimized, or does the advertiser have to constantly advertise with you and then you take the article down? What is your policy on that, if I may ask?
Well, it depends on the deal. For example, the Mayo Clinic sponsorship, that's called Health Highlights. That's a sort of a health literacy effort across a wide array of topics. It's every single week. They're the sponsor of our science and health content in print and digital. So we actually, if you look at the hamburger menu on starttribune.com website, and you click on that, you'll see they're their own drop-down chapter, like where you see variety content and business content and sports. You'll see health highlights from Mayo Clinic. All of their content is archived there. They pay for that. So it depends on the scope and the scale of the branded content campaign and what the contractual relationship is. So yes and no to that one. And I should also mention, Mike, it's not just our branded products that we run these campaigns through. So it's not just Start Tribune Print or StartTribune.com or StartTribune.com, M-site or the app. We also push that content through our Advantage network. So that's our digital products and services off platform to expand reach. So in the example of Mayo Clinic, we're pushing that content out in their other markets. They have Florida market, they have an Arizona market. We're pushing content out through our Advantage network for that particular account, far beyond the reach of the vast reach of the Start Tribune branded solutions.
Well, we got to keep moving on. Is there any other questions, Matt, from our audience to address
we did
to
a
Paul?
question come in about where the branded content is sourced from, so how you're building it, what the process is you're going through to create it.
Yeah, well, I've hired up for it, so it's all internal. We've got, I think we've got 12 people in that group now. The process is very much like a sales process. That group goes in and they meet with the customer and they do discovery and they do fact finding. They try to find out what's the story they're trying to tell. They try to find out more about what content they have available. what their audience is. They decide what channels are going to be best. They work up some creative concepts. Those get approved, and then we go live and we optimize throughout the campaign. We figure out what creative is resonating, which channels are outperforming others, and we continually optimize the campaign as we run through it.
We have that interview with Gordon Burrell when he issued the mind-blowing report that there's tons of money out there for sponsored content, branded content, native. It's got a million names, but we're now all settling in the industry, Paul, on branded content. Am I correct? That's the new.
That's the term that I'm hearing most often, so I'm going with it. And in our experience, Gordon has proved to be quite prophetic.
It is. Well, he will tell you, today's his birthday, by the way, but he will tell you that he's 90% right usually with his prognostications. Thank you, Paul. Let's move on now. We have 30 minutes left, and I'm going to go to a good friend in Chicago. God forbid we stay on the content process, right, Jason? That was sarcasm, Jason.
I'm going to just continue on with what Paul was just talking about, but probably from a smaller market perspective.
Sure.
All right, well, I'll jump right in. You can go ahead and just stay on this slide, the first slide there for a moment. I'll just kind of walk you through an overview of kind of how we got started. So we've been doing, we call it sponsored content. Obviously, it's called branded content, native advertising as well. We're in our 8th year of doing sponsored content. We have it, unlike Paul, we use stringers. We have it's a turnkey program that we have a project manager that actually assigns out, creates the content ideas, assigns out the stories, manages the whole process. So our AEs, when they sell it, don't really have to think about it once it's sold. These are, we sell all of our contracts. They're 12-month contracts that we're selling. And we're coming up on it right now. June and July is our contract closing contests that we have. We have about 125 clients that are running on this program. We have about a 90% ratio of maintaining those clients. We got hit a little bit in the pandemic for sure, but it's been a very successful program for us. We're running about, I'd love to say that we're at $3 million, Paul. That would be fantastic. But we're at about $650,000, which has been for us a really big win. It's and we see the program growing year over year. So what I'd like to do is just kind of walk you through all of the different elements of where we're posting this content, and take you through our reporting process, and then I'll take you through a couple of the packages that we have as well, just to give you an idea of where we're at with this. Go ahead, Mike. All right, so a lot of this I'm sure is similar to what Paul is doing on their side. But what we do, we treat our sponsored content just like a news story. So we enter it into our CMS feed. So you'll see on the left side of the page there, we identify in the feed that it is sponsored. It's a little difficult to see in this picture here, but right over the image, we actually have sponsored. So it sits within the CMS until obviously it's on that home page until it gets worked off by other content. And then about a week later, that bottom ad unit there, we created a native ad unit within our home page, which then we run a campaign for about 5 days, just to really drive the engagement of the campaign. When you click over to the article page, we have the byline is actually the client's name. At the end of the content, we'll have the contact information. All of our programs include either a customized or a montage video. So we'll either do on location or we'll do a montage. So those are actually embedded in the story. And then we'll have the client's logo there as well. Go ahead, Mike. So this, we also have on the home page a sponsored content block. Now just to give you an idea of our market, we have 47 newspapers. All of the newspaper marketplaces actually touch each other. So it's one actually large marketplace. We have about 7 dailies within those 47 publications. And we have one website that's called Shaw Local. And then underneath all of those, underneath that Shaw Local brand, the parent brand, we have the child sites, which would be all of our newspapers roll up under that site. So we really created more of a regional brand with a bunch of local brands built underneath it. So each one of these child sites or the mastheads will have a sponsored block like this as well um, that is specific to their market. So each one of these programs that we run, we can either run regionally or we can run it specific to each market. So the newest stories within this content block feed in, and as new stories come in, they'll fall off of here. But it's just another way of getting that content in front of our readers. Mike? We also, this will also sit on the category page. So kind of like what Mike was saying before from an SEO perspective, obviously news organizations rank really high with all the search engines. So we have the content actually all within a category page on each site. Also, they're specific to each market. This content will, again, we have about a 90% ratio of maintaining our clients. And so we have content that's been up on the site for these clients for about 8 years now, which really makes a difference for a lot of our clients that pay attention to their Google Analytics and how they're ranking. Once a client does cancel with us, we do take all of that content off of our sites.
That's the question. So in other words, is if the advertiser, when they see themselves optimized, Jason, on Google, and if they cancel the contract, they come off. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah. All right, you could go on to the next. All right, and then we'll also run this content within our news products, and so I'll show you the packages shortly, but we'll run either 2 to 1 stories per month, and then we run that content within our print products as well. We also, and where we get some of our highest engagement is through the email blast. So we'll do an email out to our each market house list, and that will go out for each story that's actually created. Go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry, go ahead, Mike. You can switch it. Thank you.
I did.
We also post it on Twitter and Facebook. Go on to the next. And then we also, in our morning newsletter updates that we have, we created a native ad unit that you could see down at the bottom there that we also incorporate their content within that newsletter. And then for some of our packages, we also use a native ad network that we push this content out across national websites as well.
Which network are you using, may I ask?
Simplify.
Simplify, okay.
All right, so this is, we were doing all of our reporting manually up until a couple years ago, and we ended up partnering with NinjaCat, and we had talked to several different reporting platforms, and NinjaCat was the one that actually was able to tackle this, since this is really a homegrown program, and they really had to tap into a lot of different, basically they're tapping into a spreadsheet that we're maintaining, to be honest with you. So it took a lot of effort to get this reporting going. But the reporting, anytime that we're close to, if we have any clients that are, we're concerned that they're going to fall off, we definitely get in front of them with report. We do an annual report every time we go out to do a contract, re-signing, and then we do quarterly reporting throughout their campaign of that 12 months. So this is an annual, but I'm only showing one page here with the content. We actually list out each one of the stories. We have an article link going directly to the story or the article, and then we show the number of impressions that were served through all of the different platforms for that, along with the engagement. Engagement basically is anybody that clicked, shared, or commented on the content. Go
Those
next slide.
numbers are, some of those numbers are astronomical for engagement. That's
Yeah, I
amazing.
mean that's what's really cool about this. And what we'll do is we actually come for each one of the markets. We talk to the newsroom and we get the average engagement for a news story. So what we'll do is actually compare that number and say, hey, look, this is the actual average news engagement that we're getting on our stories. This is the engagement that you're getting with your content. And there hasn't been one time that the engagement numbers on these sponsored content articles don't just blow away, our daily news articles.
I think the audience should note that you're doing a technique that works better for opening up these articles, which is putting a number into the title. 3 ways, 5 do's, 3 tips, 3 tips, 5. People, for some reason, open those better. I think we see that everywhere now, CNN, Fox, wherever we go. But it turns out people like to know there's a number of bullets they're going to access through the click. And obviously you've learned that yourself, haven't you, Jason, as you put these together?
Yeah, I mean, like Paul was saying, I mean, one of the things that we spend a lot of time with is looking at the engagement numbers for each one of the articles that we create, and then we try to create more content like that that's getting the more engaging content. We try to fall off of the content that's not there. So this will give you an overall for the entire year of each one of the articles that ran, the impressions that ran, along with the engagement that happened. So it's just another layout of the stats. This here will show the number of articles that we actually published for that client, the number of impressions that we drove for the client, and what's really I mean, this is an actual. I believe this is a funeral home, which surprisingly they get an amazing engagement. You can see their engagement numbers are close to the number of impressions that we actually served. So the engagement for this client is fantastic.
If you ever doubted why sponsored content, I'm talking to the audience now, is valuable to an advertiser, this page alone tells the story. Look at all that engagement based on a good story, a good piece of content. Amazing. And this is new content ideas. Oh, so you can work with the. I see what you're doing here with the
Yeah. So what
advertising.
we do, ultimately, what we do, and this goes back to where I started with the turnkey approach, where when we go to re-sign a contract, we actually will fill out. Our project manager comes up with content ideas for each one of the months for the client. So it's not something that you have to go back and forth with the client on. They review it, they'll tweak it, they'll have a discussion about it, but we definitely go in with ideas prior to going in for a contract.
If you have the advertiser discuss the concept with you during the closing process, you're doing what's called the assumed close. You're already
That's
speaking
right.
post
If they start saying, "Oh, well, I'm not quite sure about this one," you're like, "Okay, we got you. Perfect."
I call that hypnotic closing. Your post agreement from the you're speaking as if they've already bought it, and they take ownership of it. Beautiful. All right, here's what you're charging. Everyone's been waiting for this, so go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, and I think that we're probably we're on the lower end again because we are a bunch of smaller markets. So this wouldn't be a regional buy. This would literally be a buy for one of our specific markets, which you know most of our circ and our dailies are around 20 to 25,000 uh, daily. So we're at this first gold package is it's 2 stories a month. We do about 300 words per story. We also boost it on Facebook. The newsletter it runs and it basically is going through everything that I just went through here and just kind of outlining it. We also include one custom video, 30-second within that, which would be an on location along with 2 montage videos. And we're charging $1,299 a month for that. And we don't take, again, we've had reps try and clients ask, can I just do month to month, or could I do 3 weeks or 3 months? And we've really held strong on keeping it a 12-month contract, because that's really where the client gets the most benefit, is by staying on the program for duration of time. And obviously we put the promotional value in there because they're getting obviously a lot of promotion with this as well. The silver package just reduces that down to 1 story a month. We also, the silver and gold package, we run on the native network as well. And you can see with this, we take out the custom video and we just have 2 montage videos. And then the last program goes down to $5.99. And this really is more stripped down and just really uses all of our O&O products.
Yeah, but this is very affordable for a chiropractor, or one, or any. This is amazing, and I'm assuming the categories you're closing are service related: healthcare, home improvement, auto aftermarket.
Yes.
Funeral homes is huge. How you doing with real estate on this? Because the market's on fire again, right? I'm assuming any home of any value in your neighborhood's got 6 buyers the moment it's listed. They need listings. Are you selling stories to those team realtors now, or are they becoming a category for you, Jason?
Yeah, they're actually becoming a category for us. We've just recently signed up about 5 realtors. So the real estate is really finance. To Paul's point, again, finance is also an area that's really strong for us as well.
Matt, any questions for Jason before we move on to Schenectady?
Yeah, just a few coming in from this side, Mike. We had one asking, Jason, if you were looking at an eCPM for your sponsored content program, what would it break down as if you've ever looked at it in that fashion?
Oh, that's a good question. I haven't looked at it in that fashion, so I apologize. I could do the math and get back to you on that, but
tons of impressions there, but yeah.
Yeah. The other question we had, and this might be for both Jason and Paul, would be, you've mentioned a few of the categories that you're targeting on here, but what are those key ones, like the top 5 that you've really found for sponsored and branded content that have really been successful?
For us, it's been finance, home improvement. Believe it or not, funeral homes is something that we never anticipated, but they've become a pretty strong partner with us. Legal has also become a strong category for us as well.
And medical, right? Are you selling cosmetic dentists and dermatologists and that, or you're having trouble with that category?
No, you're right. Medical is also another one. We actually have a few hospital groups that we work with, along with chiropractors and dentists, and yes, all along that way.
Yeah, and I would say the same thing. Same categories in Minneapolis. It's medical, it's financial, or medical/health, financial, real estate, home improvement, and believe it or not, retail. Just different philosophies. We're not doing the volume thing. We're just trying to pick a few players in each category and just do larger scale deals.
We're going to have a contest. Unfortunately, we can't now. I was going to say anyone who can spell Schenectady properly gets themselves a free issue for a year of Editor and Publisher magazine. John, you've been waiting in the background. We're saving the best for last. Well, all the presentations have been great, but John, you're a way out of the box thinker. So we're now moving away from content and talking about just ways to monetize in general. John, take it away. John? Hello, John DeAugustine. Are you there, sir? Matt, is he with us still? John we checked it. Do you see him on the list there, Matt?
I'm looking right now. We might have lost him along the way. He might have lost some connection there.
Oh, darn. All right. I'm going to quickly show his slides, if I may. You keep an eye out for him, Matt, would you? And see if
Mike, before you jump into there, could I ask a question of the group there? We had one come in.
Yes, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, John, you're with us. What was the question for the group?
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No sweat.
Just the question was for the folks that have been doing e-newsletters, what's the best days they found for dropping those?
Paul, best day to push a newsletter?
Early week from our end.
Jason?
We're doing them daily. And we have
Okay.
so many newsletters at this point. We probably have about 100 newsletters that we're pushing out a day.
All right, let's go out of the box now with John DeAugustine. John, are you still with us, sir, in Schenectady?
I hope so.
There
And
you are.
thank
Go
you
ahead.
so much. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, so we are going to talk about something completely different. At the Gazette, we realized a few years ago that the revenue for newspapers is so uneven that we needed to come up with strategies to bolster that revenue during those uneven times. And we wanted to make sure that we were using the staff that we had. So we had a few fits and starts, some businesses that we got into that the team here really wasn't able to resonate around. So, or it didn't resonate with them. But we found two that just seemed to take off right out of the gate. And we had a couple of criteria that we were really looking at. And one was it had to fit nicely into the team that we had so we could utilize them. And secondly, it couldn't be too big of a distraction. So they had to give us a turnkey operation. We didn't want to take all the effort away from our news operation or our advertising operation. So the first one we found was a sign business. We partnered with Alliance Franchise Brands. We chose them after quite a bit of research, but they fit perfectly into our organization. As a matter of fact, a little too perfectly at first. We took people out of our operation. We sent them to school to teach them how to be sign people. They took over the sign business and we gave it to our sales reps to sell. And within 2 weeks, we completely blew out the business. We weren't able to fulfill our orders. We were shipping orders to a bunch of other businesses. It became a disaster. The people at Image 360 are wonderful. They were there to support us and they were helping us ship all the work off. But we realized that we had to scale it back. So we actually took the ability to sell signs off of our sales reps for a few months. And then the pandemic hit. So then we weren't selling any signs. We had to shut it down. But we got back up and running in a few months. We reintroduced it to our sales reps. And with that ability to sell any signage in the businesses that they were calling on, it was just a natural. And it enabled those sales reps to keep their revenue up when their revenue would have otherwise been down. So our team, our retail team mainly is who sells this, was able to hold on to their revenue. They were able to hold on to their income, and we were able to keep our goals up and not really take a terrible beat, as I know many of us have in the retail advertising space. So the sign business has just been a huge win for us. The real challenge for us was understanding the business when we got into it. It was incredible, the amount of learning that had to take place for us to really get it to be a part of our institutionalize it is really the words I like to use. And so for that to happen, it took us well over a year. And now it's just part of what we do. And so when we sell them ads or a digital package or native advertising or whatever it is that they might need, they also buy a sign from us, and all of their signage needs. So it just fits in. And I would encourage anybody to take a look at it if you have a good operation in your market.
Profit is, there's got to be expense against this. Am I allowed to ask you, sir, what kind of margins you're getting on this kind of stuff?
Sure. So the slide there explains when we started out, it was about $100,000 investment, pretty low to get into a business. The credit's available, so you don't really need to tap into your cash reserves. We lost about $140,000 in the first 3 or 4 months, not because of sales, all because of operations. We squandered $140,000,
Okay.
and now we're pulling a 12% margin on it.
That's what I mean.
We
12.
our target is 30%. And Image 360s, we all share. Once you buy into the franchise, you see everybody's financials down to what size paper they're buying to and how much they pay for it. And 30% margin is pretty fair.
John, is this a product offering able though to bring in new business that you can sell other media to? Is there a back end on that's creating good? I mean, is like an entree to a new advertiser, then you can show them other tools in your toolbox?
So these customers all go into our CRM, and they are assigned a sales rep. We have not been very successful in converting them. This is about $1 million business. It's not a huge business. The customer counts are not what we would normally be used to, really high volume customers. A lot of them are residential, so we don't have an opportunity to sell them an ad package, but they do go into our CRM. Our reps do make a relationship with them. They continue to sell them signs. They offer them advertising, but we haven't seen a lot of traction going in that direction. We have seen a lot of traction going in the other direction. Customers that we have advertising relationships buying signs.
Let's talk about your logistics thing, if you don't mind. Let's get into that and see what's going on.
I'd love to talk about that. That business was a lifesaver. So we bought that on January 4th. That investment was about $500,000. And we got into the FedEx delivery business. We took on a guy to run the business, but everybody else that we really put into that business on the support side came right out of our newspaper. So finance, recruiting drivers, all the back end paperwork that you need to do for FedEx, which is extremely structured, came out of our circulation organization. And then and our business office. So we had to hire no back end people in this business. We did need to hire, and they are expensive. They're $100,000 a year people to do any logistics work. That's where they start the conversation. So they're expensive to run the business, but everything else on the back end came out of our team. When we bought it, it was about $800,000 a year in annual revenue. Right now, we're running at about $4 million a year in annual revenue. When the pandemic hit, it was insanity. Our volumes went through the roof overnight. The nice thing about being a partner with FedEx is everything's at your fingertips. If you need trucks, they give you the best rate to buy a truck. You have credit to get the truck. They tell you what trucks to buy, everything down to scanners, iPads, everything you can imagine. They have at your fingertips, and just having that V number enables you to buy all this stuff at a greatly reduced cost. I'll give you an example. We just purchased another truck. The truck, I tried to buy it from one of our advertisers. I went down and I talked to him. I showed him the spec sheet. We're buying the truck for $5,000 less than he can buy the truck for. So it's just, you can't, there's no competition. So they really set it up so you're successful. The target margin on that business is 15%. Most operators are doing between 10 and 15%. The best operators are doing 18 to 20% margins. The business grows every year. All they want to talk to you about is, and for us, we believe that 15% margin is easily sustainable because we use recruiting drivers is a huge expense and the biggest distraction. We use all of our own marketing to recruit drivers. We actually recruit drivers for other contractors now. So it's a natural fit. Our circulation people, our business office people, this is all natural for them. They're able to do all the back end work. and it just fits into our operation.
So basically, knowing that we're moving into a digital space as a newspaper industry, but we have this entire circulation team in place that's delivering our legacy product, you woke up one morning and said, I'm going to save these jobs and go into where everything's moving anyway, which is e-commerce. And you already had like half the logistics in place. That's what you're saying. And it was a natural marriage for you to pick up this business in your market, correct?
Yes, that was the plan, and it worked.
Mind
So we
blowing.
got, yeah, it worked out pretty well. Our next, we would love to do assembly work, and hopefully maybe next year I'll talk to you guys about how we now have assembly at our facilities where we used to stack up preprints
What do you mean by
that aren't
assembly?
there anymore.
Treat me like I'm a 3-year-old. When you say assembly, what do you mean?
So we have a large commercial building, and we are a commercial printer. So we have a huge area where we stored newsprint and preprints. Well, us and our other customers that we print have far fewer preprints now. So we freed up manufacturing space, and we're shopping we have a huge staff. They're not as big now, but we have access to people that work in our mailroom, and they are reasonably priced, high volume, easily managed group. So we believe they can do assembly work. So we want to put things together. It's a huge problem in our market. There's no space for light manufacturing. So we have a lot of people looking at the space to rent, but we would rather use that space to take that business on and utilize those people to do that work. So we'll see.
Is there a demand
we got a couple
for that now? Are there companies that just desperately want people that are in a building to put things together? And since you already have that team in place, you're just morphing into that? I mean, is there a demand? Can you sell that?
Yes.
Wow. Mind blowing and definitely out of the box. Any questions for Mr. DeAugustine there, Matt? Anybody making any comments in the chat room about this?
The only one we had come in so far was looking for the sales flyers, how they're approaching the printing, how they're distributing, how they're getting that news out there, and if you had examples to share of what those sales flyers look like.
Sure, I can get them. They're just part of our collateral deck. We do a weekly one-on-one with all the salespeople, and they get a deck. It has all the things that are coming up, and so the sign slides are in there, and the Image 360 folks help us with collaterals. So we feature different things every month in the sign business for them to talk about. And we do digital signs too. So sometimes it'll be digital, sometimes it'll be, pedestal signs. It could be vinyl, but there's always something new, some educational piece, something that they can talk to their customers about.
And a follow up on that one was, how do you spiff your salespeople for the signage part of the business? So do they have set quotas they have to reach, or?
Well, so at first we spiffed them. So if you sold a sign, you got money. We gave them 3 months to get acclimated, and then we gave them all a sign target. So they had their traditional revenue or whatever revenue they were selling, and then we said, you need to generate $500 or $1,000, depending on the territory, $2,000 a month in signage, and then that was just tacked on to the top of their revenue goal. Now we use a gross revenue goal, so if they can make it up in other products, we're fine. They still make their commission. But when we break down their revenue for them and their plan to get to their revenue target for the month, the signs are part of it.
How about for the rest of the group? Any other thoughts, questions? Now's the time to type them into the chat environment and let Matt give them to our panel. Anything else coming through, Matt?
We've had quite a few along the way here, but there's none right now. I think folks might ask the questions they had up to this point.
There you go. Ladies and gentlemen, it was my honor. I want to thank Paul first. Paul, thank you. You stay warm up there. I understand there's a little bit of a cold spell in Minneapolis right now. Is that correct?
No, it's lovely.
That is a misperception.
Misperception. We really appreciate your giving us some really great perspective on how we can tie in virtual events and maybe keep them going even post-pandemic. Jason is all in when it comes to content. Am I correct, Jason? Jason, are you still with us?
He is on. He's here, but he's on mute right now.
He's on mute. Well,
Oh,
Jason,
there we go. Maybe that would help to come off mute. Yes, no, the sponsored content, branded content's been great for us, and we certainly continue to keep growing the program.
and then John, the most out-of-the-box thinker I know, who looks at his operation not as a newspaper, but as a company with assets, and how can I use those assets best? And John, you're saving jobs too. God love you. Your team must be just so motivated about the ways you're just keeping that business churning up there. And by the
Thank
way,
you.
I have to mention, John, I've traveled up there and worked with you. You want to talk about an over-mediated market? Go get into the Albany DNA. You've got more newspapers, more TV, more radio, and you can shake a stick at up there, and you just keep, keeping your head above water. We really appreciate that. I took the liberty, gentlemen, of putting your email addresses on this slide. I'm assuming you guys have no problem if anyone wants to reach out for more information, correct?
Absolutely.
Sounds good.
And I will supply the slides through the P&A as well. It's my honor and pleasure to be part of this for you. I hope you all stay healthy, stay well, and thanks so much for allowing editor and publisher to be part of this great symposium. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks for
Thank
having
you
us.
all.
All right. Thank you, Mike and Paul, Jason, John. Wonderful session. Such great creativity and collaboration. We have two more sessions in the advertising symposium. One later today is data-driven advertising, how to use data and information to create more effective sales calls. So that's later at 3. The last session of the symposium is Friday at 10 a.m., and that's called Securing Profitable Salespeople. If you haven't registered for these sessions and would like to attend, please contact the PNA by emailing events@panewsmedia.org or visiting the website's contact page. Mike Blinder, great job as usual. Thank you all, and have a great day.